Why don't we rent a video tonight?
Yeah, can we please?
On a weeknight?
Yeah, come on, Mom. It's okay.
Sure. Come on. Let's throw caution to the wind.
Put a little weekend in your week. Rent a video.
Welcome to Vericon Video, a weekly show where we relive forgotten and unforgettable movies that once lined shelves of video stores everywhere. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Joseph.
And we have a great show for you today. We're talking about a great comedy cult classic involving imaginary friends, overbearing mothers, Carrie Fisher, and dog poo. We're talking Drop Dead Fred from 1991, starring Phoebe Cates, Rick Mayall, Tim Matheson, and the late Carrie Fisher. It's hilarious, gets surprisingly dark, and is loads of fun. So get your mud pies and your sweater stripies ready and cozy up to your imaginary friends. Sit back, relax, and welcome.
Welcome to the Cafe 80s, where it's always morning in America, even in the afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I have the only gun on board. Welcome to Con Air.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Okay, good evening, America, and welcome aboard Apollo 13.
I'm so glad you could come. This is going to be such an exciting day. I hope you're enjoying it. I think you will.
Elizabeth loses her job, her adulterous husband, and her car all in the same day, and is forced to move back in with her mother. She then receives a surprise visit from her troublemaking childhood imaginary friend, Drop Dead Fred, who promises to help her get her life back while sabotaging it in the process. Joseph, did you ever have any imaginary friends?
Man, well, I didn't have an imaginary friend, but I had a dog named Lucky, a little stuffed toy dog, and 5 or 6 years old, right? That's about the time where, it starts to kick in, where you just need that friend. But, for me, I just felt compelled that it was a dog instead of an actual person. So everywhere I go, I had to have Lucky around, and I feel like it'd bring me luck. I come back from kindergarten or first grade, and there's Lucky on my bed, and I'm just like, can you do my homework for me? And I just pretend that it does my homework for me, and I end up going to class, and it's like, my dog ate my homework. So
Lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I don't remember having imaginary friends. I think the closest thing I had was when I was younger. I would imagine just being in the company of people from different movies, I don't know, watching a movie with Batman or something like that. I didn't have a lot of friends my own age. I was an only child, and then when I started kindergarten, I started finally, meeting people and stuff. But before then, it was just me and the TV. That was my babysitter, and so that's where my collection of friends came from at the time.
Right.
So Drop Dead Fred was not well received at the box office when it came out. Film critic Gene Siskel called this film the worst film of 1991. When shopping for a distributor, almost every major one turned the project down. New Line Cinema CEO Bob Shea reportedly called the movie horseshit.
Oh, man.
But Sarah Risher, along with Shea, who were both responsible for building their company with the A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. New Line's also known as the house that Freddy built. But she liked the project and convinced New Line to pick up the theatrical and TV rights, but not the rights for home video. Those were later sold to Live Entertainment, who had distributed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the year before. And this was the year that films came out like Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead,
mm-hmm.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, City Slickers, Ernest Scared Stupid, What About Bob? And a lot of those later gained their own cult status.
True.
Let's see. So cast-wise, we got Phoebe Cates, best known for Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Gremlins 2,
Gremlins, yeah.
The New Batch. Rick Mayall, who plays Drop Dead Fred, best known for stand-ups, some sketch comedy, and his work on a BBC sitcom called The Young Ones. But he was relatively unknown to American audiences at the time, so it was a risky move in the casting, I think. People would likely know, of Cates and Fisher and Matheson, but the titular Drop Dead Fred, Mayall was able to show off his talents across the pond and create a memorable and dynamic character on the screen. The part was actually written for him, and he even contributed some ideas to the script, like the scene in the beginning where the mother is reading Elizabeth fairy tales, and then even the sinking of the houseboat.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was
interesting.
What he contributed to the story. And I read somewhere that somewhere along the way Robin Williams was offered the role, but he turned it down to star in Hook.
Wow.
So
okay.
that would have been a very different movie.
Very.
And Tim Burton's also said to have been offered to direct it, but declined. That would have been also a very different movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still kind of, it has that same kind of whimsical quality to it that is very Burton-esque, but it's a very different kind.
Yes,
Burton's is much darker and more like macabre and gothic territory, whereas this is more psychological, I guess. Or
in a way. I think the Dijon director guy, he was really new to everything. If I remember correctly, he did a lot of directing between 1970s to 2000s, early 2000s. But Drop Dead Fred and Highway to Hell were like one of his best. But for Drop Dead Fred, I think he really allowed the character of Fred to do his own thing to build up his physique in a way to really capture the audience. So I think that was kudos to him for doing that.
Absolutely. And you should also give credit to the screenwriters. There's a pair of screenwriters that I don't think have made, but have written like a couple of films, 2 or 3 films, I think. Yeah, Carlos Davis and Anthony Fingleton. Do you remember several years ago, Russell Brand was going to star in a remake?
Oh, yeah.
I remember reading about that on the net, and I guess it's been about 6 or 7 years ago. And I remember thinking, well, that might work, I don't know. But then Arthur came out.
Yeah, that's true.
And I remember thinking at the time, too, that was a very weird one to remake.
Yes.
The original was, not a great movie, but Dudley Moore was really funny in it, and you would really need a very comic person to fill those shoes. So it kind of makes sense that they would try to bring in Russell Brand to play that role as well. But since Arthur bombed, they're like, no, we're just going to scrap this project.
Yeah.
So,
all together.
Thank goodness.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a little background to Whet Your Palate. And I think we're ready to jump right in and have a look at Drop Dead Fred.
Let's do this.
All right. So we open on Elizabeth's mother. She's reading her 5-year-old daughter a book of fairy tales. You can already see on the cover, it's Fred colors. It's these different greens and yellows.
It's all about
stuff.
The greens and yellows. Yeah.
So we see that theme already starting to pop up. And then we flash forward 22 years later. Elizabeth, she's in her car and she's sitting outside the Jaguar dealership, and she's getting ready to go in to see Charles, her husband, who apparently had an affair, and so she's psyching herself up to say, Charles, I forgive you. She's going to try to get him back. And so she goes in, and before she can even say anything, he's just like, oh, you were so right. You were so right. And I'm going to do it. I'm just going to move in with Annabella. That's going to be the best thing for me to move on.
Right, like, what a douchebag.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
and
right.
she's like, what? I never said that. And she's, oh, of course you did. It was your idea. And she's so like taken aback.
Like, oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And she's even like, Annabella, is that her name? Like,
yeah.
Wow. And actually, Annabella is played by an uncredited Bridget Fonda. Mm-hmm. And I think that I'd heard somewhere that was a favor to Phoebe Cates because they'd been friends at the time. But Charles is just laying it on thick. He's just, I couldn't help it. I was just so smitten with Annabella. He leaves, and this woman wants to take this Jag for a test drive, and Elizabeth pulls up next to him, and he's like, oh, we're still going to see each other. We're not going to throw away 2 years together. And she's like, it was 3 years.
Asshole.
It's like, but it was like, that is a classic douchebag line, like to try to pad in a way in if he needs it later on, to, if he needs somebody, so we'll still see each other.
Oh, man.
And so she goes to call up Janie, played by Carrie Fisher, and while she's on the phone, this guy steals her purse. So breaks her window of her car, steals a purse, and this guy's outfit is ridiculous.
Oh, I know.
He's wearing like a peach paisley shirt and a yellow clown tie. Like, he looks like he could be an imaginary character, And then seconds later, somebody else walks by and steals the car. She's late to get to work. She goes into the courtroom. She's a court reporter, and she's immediately fired. And then shortly after, she runs into her childhood friend, Mickey, who she learns is recently divorced and has a daughter, when that'll pay off later in the end. But she doesn't seem to remember much about her childhood. He reminds her of Drop Dead Fred. And he's even kind of weird when he talks about it because he's like, oh, I believed you. You know, Fred was crazy, you know. And do you remember what he did to my mother or my grandmother? Or, you know,
it's just ridiculousness. It's
yeah.
like, oh, man.
Yeah. But he was like, oh, I believed you, but no one else could see him but you. You know, completely, you know, he's just all smiles the whole time. And I don't know if he's just that type of person who's happy all the time because he's always smiling.
It's a very skeptical, weird, sketchy kind of feeling. You know, why are you smiling about all this?
Yeah, and he doesn't seem to have any malice in him. Like, he just seems like that type of really amped up personality that's just seemingly joyful all the time, you know. But we learned that, you know, Drop Dead Fred would only appear when her mother got to her, had called her names or abused her in some way. Elizabeth goes back to the apartment she shared with Charles, and her mother is there. And she's like, I've packed your things. You're moving back in with me. And she can't say no to her mother. You know, she's like, I'm not going. You know, I'm staying here tonight.
Exactly.
And then next scene, they're pulling into the driveway together. You know, she couldn't say no.
This is where I'd like to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. You know, da 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 da. Here we go to Mother's house.
Yeah, very ominous. You know,
crazy.
Oh, yeah. As soon as we go in, I love this. We first see, just off the foyer, this sign that's been taped up on the string across the door frame. Do not remove. You know, the mom says, don't go in there. I just had the carpet shampooed. And so, again, that will pay off later in a delightful way.
Oh, yes.
She goes into, I should mention this, that as she's going up to her room, her mom says, well, what do you say? Thank you, Mother. That's a good girl.
Like, I'm not, you know, married or anything, or I'm not an adult or anything. It's not like I'm not 5 years old anymore, Mom, but thanks for telling me that.
So if little Elizabeth is, I think they say that she's 5 years old. And in the beginning it says 22 years later. So she's 27. She's an adult.
She's well into her adulthood.
Yeah. But she's still treated like a child.
Like a child, right.
And then she goes into her room, her childhood room, that is nauseously pink.
Yes, I realized that.
Everything is pink. Hot pink.
How do you feel about that?
It was straining on the eyes, but it was certainly, you know, a conscious choice in the art direction, but it was also kind of the mother. It was an extension of the mother's control over her daughter.
In a way, I don't think the mother wanted to move on because in a way that was a symbolism of, you know, she's still my little girl.
Yeah. And at this point, she had no one left. Like her husband had left her. We don't know when.
Good old Nigel.
Yeah. But she's rummaging around in a cupboard and she finds a Jack-in-the-Box with tape around it. And so she puts it on the shelf and then she goes to sleep. Starts having a nightmare. And we have a flashback. And this scene scared the shit out of me as a kid. I still remember. It might have been in the trailer. I don't remember. But young Elizabeth wakes up and she's looking at this light above her, which of course is also pink.
Coincidentally.
And it just comes on by itself. So the room is cast in this harsh pink light. And then we see this hand slither out from behind her pillow and slap her on the head.
Like, whoa. Where'd that come from?
The arm itself was creepy enough, but it was the colors and that bright pink and the green of his sleeve and everything. It just seemed kind of dark and menacing, and even the music seemed to
go along with it.
Go along with that, yeah. It wasn't lighthearted at all. And so back in the present, Jack-in-the-Box starts playing by itself on the windowsill. The crank starts moving on its own. You know, it's going to do, and then it just stops. You know, and that was kind of creepy.
That
too.
was
That's like something out of The Conjuring or something.
Right?
You know?
Is something just going to like pop out and kill her, or you know what's going to happen?
Don't know. I mean, at this point, we really don't even know what kind of movie this is.
Right.
Yet. Besides the opening credits, which has a lot of, you know, fart sounds and stuff, we don't really know kind of what we're in for. So she takes the tape off the Jack-in-the-Box. Fred pops out as this little green wad of felt, I guess, with a little tuft of orange hair on it. And it rolls under the bed. She's peeking under it. And then when she peeks under the bed, it's gone. Again, we're more horror tropes here, you know. And then Fred just pops up beside her and he's like, "Hey, there's my face!" You know?
You're ugly!
Yeah. You're older! Even uglier! You know? And he starts going off and he's rummaging around, you know, looking for the toys.
The dolls.
Yeah, and he gets this little sock, sock monkey, and he just starts ripping it to pieces, you know, tearing the stuffing out. It's, my intestines! My intestines! You know?
Oh, man.
That was delightful.
That's great.
And so, you know, he finds out, Elizabeth has grown up, and, you know, he's surprised at first, but then he's like, great. You know, he's really into it. He's like, oh, let's go get into mischief. And so they go downstairs. This is where, like, I guess HD really reveals the warts of the film, is because there's an obvious stunt double sliding down the banister that is not Rick Mayall.
Right.
And, you know, classic stunt, you know, hits his crotch on the
stairwell. It's like a block right there at the stairwell.
I think it's like a newel post or
some
something.
specific stylish name for it.
And then classic Fred pauses and digs a booger out of his nose and wipes it on her cheek.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and is delighted. He's just, you know, he's just so excited. He goes outside and he comes back in walking on his hands.
I'm like, is this an acrobatic thing at first? Is you know, I didn't think anything was going to happen out of that. I was like, oh, he's just doing some moves. All right.
Yeah, we don't really know what he's up to. And then he walks up to that room with the shampooed carpet. I got some dog poop right here. And he catapults himself over the little barrier the mom has set up and lands with this splat, and he just starts rubbing dog shit all over this carpet.
He's on an ice skater, man. Yeah. You know, he's just like, let's go.
He's just dancing practically. He jumps up on a chair, might be on the arms of the chair. He's just having a great time. This is when the mom pops out and is like, oh, Elizabeth, is everything okay? You know, she's like, oh, I'm just getting some water. And so she realizes, okay, I got to do something quick. Hey, Fred, how about we play a game, you know? And he's like, yeah, but not dolls, because we're grown-ups now, you know?
Yeah.
He says, well, let's play hide and seek. And he's like, great, I love hide and seek, you know? He's so excited. He's going to hide in a place where she'll never, ever find him. Bye-bye, you know, and takes off. The next morning, you know, she thinks it's all a dream until she sees her mom on her hands and knees scrubbing this dog shit out of the carpet.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And, you know, she's livid about it, too, like usual.
Yeah, she's livid, but she doesn't really question, like, what happened.
Right. It's just...
And this is something we're going to come back to over the course of this episode, but, you know, we want to be mindful of the fact that since Fred is imaginary, that everything that Fred does, Elizabeth is actually doing.
Yes.
So sometime during the night, she woke up, put on shoes, went outside, and found some dog shit and brought it back in the house. On her hands, maybe.
Because apparently it was nowhere else.
It was nowhere else
but the carpet.
But the carpet, exactly. Right. That's something to think about as well. So we're at breakfast. We're at the breakfast table. Fred pops up. The mom's in the kitchen. He's like, oh, it's the mega bitch.
The mega bitch. That's what a word.
Yeah, no. Oh, it's so great.
It's awesome.
One of the big special effects of the movie comes that he sticks his head in the fridge. The mom closes it, and he's trying to pull his head out, and it's all flat and everything. Which, the makeup effects aren't all that great.
No. But granted, you know, I think... that was probably the best they could have done, considering the situation of his, you know, head being stuck in the door. But it was a very nice way of making his face look like Flat Stanley, and just arts of that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to look at, but
yeah. I mean, this was 1991, so Terminator 2 came out around that time. So we could say that, oh, well, there should be no excuses, but there are restraints that we don't know about that have that impact on what is actually feasible in the moment. While Fred is on his back, after he gets his head back in order, he slides under the mother's dress.
Yes. Which happens numerous times during this movie.
It does. A lot of upskirt action in this movie.
Yes. I mean, watch out, kids. This is not rated G.
Watch out for a guy in a green jacket. If you see him on the ground, be sure to run away.
Yes.
As he's looking under her dress, wow, cobwebs.
You know? Yeah.
And Elizabeth cracks up
so hard.
But the mom, oddly enough, like, she's still not really responsive to Elizabeth just bursting into laughter.
Right.
She doesn't, like, what are you laughing about? Oh, you know, it's no reason Charles left you.
Right.
Just kind of, whatever it is, she's to blame for her problems.
Total oblivion to her, but, you know, everything's on her daughter.
Exactly. And when Fred finds out that she's married, he's like, you mean you got married? You've been doing it like the pigeons.
Like the pigeons.
Like the pigeons.
Oh my gosh.
I'll be honest with you, I really don't understand the weight of that comment. Because normally when someone uses that in context, it's like they talk about doing it like rabbits or something.
Right.
They're like pigeons, doing it like the pigeons.
I mean, are we flying here? Are we...
I don't even think about pigeons as creatures that reproduce, even. Like, I don't even think about them in those terms. Yes, never the first thing comes to mind.
Might as well mention Tinkerbell flying through the air with some pixie dust, you know?
Yeah, might as well. I mean, I think the sky's the limit at this point.
Honestly.
And so we find out why he's here. So he's stuck here because she's all alone, she's unhappy, and he can't go home until she gets happy. So he says, "Get happy," and he smacks her in the face with a shovel.
So get happy!
Yeah. But even in this scene, I think we can already see like they have really great chemistry. Like,
yes.
As actors. They seem to really have that rapport, or that relationship already pre-existing.
Yes.
It just seems like that this is a relationship that has authentically been established over 20 years ago.
Yes. And I think it was very important for this movie.
For the heart of this movie to work, it depends completely upon that relationship being absolutely believable. So then Fred gets upset and he runs out into the street and is going to allow himself to be struck by the next vehicle that comes along. It just happens to be a fire truck.
Yeah, sure enough.
Yeah. And it strikes him, and it just leaves his empty shoes in the road.
Bye, Fred.
Bye, Fred. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of funny. I think they use that in the trailer too. But I always thought that was kind of neat, and I was like, I like those shoes.
Yeah. Don't worry about Fred, but the shoes are nice.
This is probably one of my, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's a flashback. We see Fred wake up Elizabeth. He's got this oversized green sweater on, and he's painted stripes on it. He's got a smaller yellow sweater with stripes on it that he's made for.
That was adorable.
It was really cute. It's time to play burglars.
It's like, oh no, what's going to happen?
It's just like, real burglars? Yeah. And he says, "God, I made you a sweater," So they creep out with a flashlight, and they're just really in the moment,
right?
And it's so cute because the little girl who plays Elizabeth is she's so cute.
She is really cute.
In her voice,
I know, innocent.
It's so innocent. She really goes from, you can really see when she is really joyful and energetic and excited, and she's having a good time, and then you can see on the other extreme how absolutely terrified she is of her mother.
Yes.
And how resentful she is of her mother.
It's very obvious where she's stuck in these two worlds, basically.
Yeah. So it's no wonder that she's had so many problems over the past 20 years.
Right.
So they discover the trash bag.
The infamous trash bag.
Yeah, the burglar bag.
Yeah.
And so they're making some noise. The parents wake up. There's a real burglar in the house. And so Fred says they're gonna steal gold and silver and expensive things, and then they're going to bury them where no one will ever find them. And this is something that happens a few times in the movie. I don't really like it, but it's whenever Fred sneezes.
Oh, yeah.
There's a particular kind of flower that the name escapes me, but it's like gladiolas, I think. But every time he sees them, he catches a whiff, and then he sneezes, and he starts bouncing all over the place. Yeah. Again, that effect isn't really all that great.
Because you notice it. You notice
it's very, very obvious. Especially watching a print today versus watching it in 91. I don't really think it adds much to the film that he bounces around like it. I guess we're showing off some effects work here.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really do much for the story or Fred's character or anything.
There was no really effect to it. Because I think it was, like you said, just an emphasis on the effects of the time. Because, it didn't deteriorate him at all. It didn't affect his health at all. It was just a mere, let's go off the walls a little bit.
Yeah, just like, this is going to slow us down for a minute. And that's about it.
Right.
So they decide to break the window, or Fred breaks the window.
Yes, Fred breaks the window.
Quote unquote, Fred breaks the window with a hammer that he pulls out of his sweater. And I love this line. He says, "I love those breaking noises."
Yes. It's all about the breaking noises.
I love that he just revels in this breaking of things, this mischief, this disregard for rules.
Right. Let's get our hands dirty a little bit.
Yeah, he's all about getting dirty.
Right.
So they bury this bag of odd and end things that they find around the house. Even the telephone they grab at one point. So they bury this stuff in the flower garden. The police show up. And while they're in the flower garden watching, a cop goes into the house, and the dad thinks that the cop is the burglar, so he runs out and tackles him. They fall down the stairs.
That was so funny.
And there was a gunshot.
Yeah, I was like, is the dad shot? What's going on?
Like this just took a dark turn really fast. Yes. And then the mom's like, "Nigel, don't die."
Golly.
It's kind of a weird turn of events there.
Yes.
But then there at the end of that scene, the father's arrested and taken off, and young Elizabeth is saying, "Drop dead Fred did it. He told her to say it." And he said, "I'm going to take the rap. alone. So Fred's up in a tree, you know, he's being a scaredy cat. It's, oh, are they gone? And then somehow Elizabeth magically gets up in the tree with him.
Yes.
So we assume that this little five-year-old scaled the tree. She's like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. She has mutant abilities that we don't know about. And there's this lovely, tender moment where he's saying, you're great. You're nothing like your mother. Don't be anything like her. I don't know, it's just really sweet. And they do this little pinky promise move. I
think the pinky thing is a very significant part of this movie as well, between Fred and Elizabeth. It was really touching.
I thought so too, you know, because it was kind of like their little inside thing.
Exactly.
You know, this was a thing that they could do to let the other person know that they were loved, and that, hey, I've got you, I got your back.
Like that handshake, you know, between friends kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So Mom is like, I'm going to help you get Charles back. We're going to go shopping. So we got this little shopping montage, typical of the time. She comes back, and of course she's dressed exactly like her mother.
Oh, yes.
You know, same outfit, similar hair. It's all about kind of remaking her daughter in her image. I know what I'm doing as a woman. Right. Like, I'm put together. That's the facade.
That was the image.
That was the image. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And when they come home, she discovers a note on the floor from Charles that says all this really sweet romantic stuff, and is like, come back to me, I love you. And so she immediately rushes over to Charles's apartment. He's not there. Fred pops up and is like, well, Charles isn't coming. I wrote the note. Ha ha, you know. He's
right.
What does he say? Haven't got a husband, haven't got a husband, got a stupid haircut.
Yes.
And then she gets really sad.
Yeah, like, she starts bawling.
Yeah. He's like, oh, you know, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. He tries to cheer her up. Rick Mayall is known for this little ear trick he does where he can tuck in the top of his ear and
it just pops back up.
Yeah, it pops back out, you know. But that doesn't work, and he tries to give her what looks like an Oreo with lint on it. Right. But Fred wants to know, like, what is it about this guy that you like so much? Oh, she really can't articulate why.
No, there's just no significant reason about this guy.
There's not. It's just, all she can really say is that I love him. Fred's crying a little bit. He's like, well, why? And he sends her flowers, brings her wine. He's so romantic and can be so sweet sometimes. Right. And Fred's like, you know, he's just so gross.
Yuck.
Yeah. Romance. But I think that's very revealing of how insecure she is.
Yes.
And how these little gestures, she thinks that she should be treated. Or these are the things that are supposed to happen in a relationship. Right. You know, that I'm supposed to be given flowers and given wine. We're going to have romantic nights on the couch.
Right.
You know, like,
the things that we all want with somebody.
Right. But it's just kind of on the surface. It's just, it's below that. There's nothing deeper or more meaningful beyond that.
The emotional part of a relationship, almost.
Yes. There's no emotional connection there at all. It's all about kind of going through the motions of what you think a relationship should be.
Right. And in this case, it was almost, well, not almost, but it was a toxic relationship, a toxic marriage, because he was the one in control, you know, and she was kind of the desperate housewife that couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't step outside her shoes and do what she wanted.
Exactly. Just like the relationship with her mother, she let someone else make the decisions for her. And then when she realizes how she's been done dirty, she doesn't really react angrily about it. Right. She's very forgiving.
Passive.
Very passive.
Yeah.
So she decides to avoid Fred and go to Janie's house at like 3 a.m. Her lover, Murray, is there.
Oh, Murray.
And he's something else too. But, but she wants to stay over, and Carrie Fisher is so great. She's like, you can't stay here. Like, Murray's here one time a month. You know,
this is
my night, and you picked tonight for this.
Oh, man.
So she finally concedes, like, okay, you can stay. And so she goes to sleep, she wakes up, and her hair is being cut. And Carrie Fisher has this great line. She's like, what, are you shedding?
Yeah.
Not like, why is there hair all over my sofa? Just, it's not a big deal. And even Janie kind of buys into the fact that Fred is real, or that he's an invisible person, because she doesn't really question Elizabeth's sanity at all.
Right.
She just knows that she's going through a lot and might actually have an invincible friend.
Right.
You know.
Right. I personally was caught off by that, you know, because I was assuming that everyone was just going to think that Elizabeth was crazy, you know. I don't see anybody. Mm-hmm. But even with Carrie Fisher, knowing that she couldn't see anybody, she still believed Elizabeth to the point where we see in that later scene at the office. It just goes crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely can't wait to get to that.
Oh,
because that was a great scene.
Beautiful. geez, Carrie Fisher, I didn't know you had this in you, even after Star Wars.
A lot of pent up rage, I'm sure.
So much.
So Elizabeth goes outside after Murray and Janie leave, and she's looking out on the river. She sees a boat go by. It's Charles. It's got to be Charles.
Yeah. So let's go after it.
Yeah. And so she grabs some binoculars, and then, ta-da, Fred pops up in full pirate costume.
Pirates!
He's just full of manic energy again.
Oh, man.
And is so anxious to play pirates. Oh, we're going to sail the 7 seas, and we're going to cut our legs. We're going to cut our legs off and glue on wooden ones, And
wants to press all the buttons.
Elizabeth is up in the
control panel, the captain's quarters.
Yeah, right, exactly. And she just happened to be up there when she went to go look for Charles in the binoculars. But then Fred is just thrilled to see all these buttons, and he just like a child.
He can't keep his hands off.
She's like, don't touch anything. And he says, okay, I'm going to be the pirate that touches nothing, except maybe that one.
Right.
And so he hits a button, and then things start beeping. Fred's like, oh, I'll go fix the engine. So he takes this gigantic wrench down there, and he just starts breaking all the gauges, and the boat floods and sinks.
It was merely because, back with our discussion of how this is all Elizabeth, right? Mm-hmm. For it being Fred and how he's imaginary. Well, it does make sense because I think her envision of Charles was so immense that she just totally forgot to, check the engine. Maybe she accidentally hit the button on her own. Yeah. And just never went down to check the problem because she was so fascinated on getting Charles. Right. And instead, we see Fred being Fred, in his, sailor-esque costume. And he's like, oh, I'm going to go fix it. Right. And then breaks the glass and everything heats up. Water's coming out of the boat. Elizabeth is like, where's the water come? I don't know. What do you think? It's just like, but it's just a very funny scene because all of a sudden we see her just walking into, the office to see, Carrie Fisher with her clothes wet.
Right, yes.
Just like, oh, jeez.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up about her seeing Charles might have been the inciting incident. Like that it was so emotionally intense for her. That's what brought Fred out of hiding.
Right.
Yeah, so she goes into the office where Janie and Murray are in a conference room. And they're having a meeting, and so she waves Janie out. And tells her, you remember your houseboat? Well, it sank, And she kind of takes it fairly well.
I was surprised.
It sank her entire house.
Right.
She's miffed about it, but she's not. If you lost your entire house...
All of your belongings. Which are not gone, by the way. They just happen to be not so close to the surface. Which was a very, reasonable excuse, I guess. But,
right, exactly. Okay. And then so Fred does pop up again. So he's in the meeting, sitting next to Murray in Janie's empty chair. And he's got on a nice little green business suit with a yellow tie. And you could tell he tried to make his hair look decent.
Right.
But he just looks kind of greasy. He's so thrilled. He's waving at everybody and he's winking and smiling. And so Janie's like, oh, is he in there? And what's he doing? So, he's waving, but he hasn't done anything yet. And Janie gets pissed. And she goes in there. Yeah. So she's going to take care of it. She doesn't care if he's invisible. I hadn't noticed this before until I rewatched it again last night. But she goes up to the chair and looks down like at Fred's crotch.
Right.
It's like, right. Says, hello, sweetheart. Aren't you a cute little thing? And tells Murray, I'll be right back with this. So she takes the chair out, rolls the chair out with Fred. And during that exchange, he looks at her and looks down at his crotch too, and then looks back and just kind of smiles. He just looks, like,
right.
Oh, okay, all right, here we go, let's go. His facial expressions really sold that.
It was, yeah, I agree.
So she takes the chair out into the hall, and she grabs air, thinking it's Fred, throws him to the ground. She's strangling what she thinks is Fred, and then starts pounding him with her shoe. And of course everybody comes out of the conference room and I'm running for Congress. What does it look like I'm doing?
That's awesome. What a line.
I know, it was a great line. And in that process, she totally outs herself and Murray because she blames Fred for ruining the
one night.
The one night that she gets with Murray while his wife is out of town.
Oh my gosh. And everyone's like, what? You know?
Yeah.
Oh, man. And honestly, I can't imagine how priceless that scene was of rerunning to make it what it was, you know, just...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that must have been great.
I've loved it in there for rehearsal. So we find out Charles has this wine tasting gala going on. And so Fred and Elizabeth go shopping to pick out a dress that Fred criticizes for looking like too much like a bruise because it's so purple. And then she says that, I'm having lunch with a friend, not you. We find out she is meeting up with her friend Mickey.
Good old
childhood.
Mickey. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good old Mickey. And so they're at this restaurant. And you can tell all she can think about is Charles. Because she says, this is Charles' favorite restaurant.
Right.
And he's like, oh, okay.
And he just goes along with it.
Yeah. And he's like, I like your hair. And she's like, oh, I don't think Charles is going to like my hair or whatever.
Right.
So just always thinking about what Charles is going to think. But Mickey is still just selling how much he likes her. He's like, I just love being around you, and he's like, I love your hair. And even that line, some people believe that you never really fall out of love. And he's coming along pretty strong.
Very
strong. Yeah. But they haven't seen each other since they were 5.
It's been quite a while.
It's been 22 years.
Oh, man.
And so, he's been married, he's divorced, and so maybe he's got some issues of his own, where he just found a recognizable face from his childhood that he related to and just became enamored with her.
Exactly. And I think because of that and because of the way she handled herself, it kind of made him feel comfortable. In a way, I guess that meant that he also had the same kind of feeling of all that energy built up.
Yeah.
And I think she really portrayed that with him. So that enabled him to be like, oh, I'm just going to go full out as well. Because this is how I've been feeling because of my situations.
Right. Yeah, he seems very liberated by her.
Yes, yeah.
I really like this scene because of us seeing Fred messing with her while she's trying to have dinner and have conversation with Mickey. Little things. Fred will grab her hand and make her pour her water out on the table.
Right.
And knock it off and break on the floor. And of course, Mickey can't see him, so he's just like, why did you do that?
Right.
It's like, I didn't. Like, no, I saw you do that. So she can't get away from it. Like, she's got her napkin in her hands, and Fred puts it up in front of her face and rips it off. And you can just see how frustrated she is, and she's just trying to play it cool, like, peekaboo.
Right.
And he's like, peekaboo. And he's just
going with it.
He's just going with it.
Especially the best part is the plate scene.
The plate scene.
Man.
Fred makes her raise her plate up to her face with both hands, and Mickey does the same. He's like, yeah, smells good. And she's like,
It's like, what's going to happen?
And then as she's sitting it down, all of a sudden she just launches it. Just into the window and just shatters. And Mickey's like, why did you do that? She's like, I'm crazy.
Let's just be honest.
Yeah. And he's like, you were crazy in the most wonderful way. And I wish I could do things like that. And he's like, what the hell? And he just starts throwing food
He does
at
it as
people.
well, yeah.
And he just goes kind of batshit crazy, on people. He's running around and the servers are trying to wrangle him. Yeah, so he's going nuts. So they have their little food fight. They get kicked out. Mickey's such a weird character.
Yeah, it's just oddball.
Yeah. Fred and Elizabeth then go out into the shopping mall. There's a little performance going on. It's like a small
music festival kind of thing, or
it's
performance.
Just like a small orchestral piece. And so she's screaming at Fred. They're having words, and then he's goodbye. You'll never see me again. So he disappears. And so she decides to relax, so she sits down, and then she notices this violinist on stage, is now Fred.
Right.
At playing violin very badly.
Oh, yes, of course.
In true Fred form. You can see the rage on her face, and she just is practically stalking up to him.
Right.
And knocks this violin out of his hands. We pan down to the violin, we follow it to the floor, then we pan back up and we see Elizabeth beating this female violinist with her purse.
Thinking it's Fred.
And this violinist is just coward.
Catastrophic.
Yeah, is just being abused there in public. And nobody's really doing anything.
They're just staring
at her. And then the next scene, we're in a little security guard's office at the mall, and the mom is paying for the violinist's violin. And even makes some kind of comment about, why would you bring such an expensive instrument to to a mall. Something like that,
right. Right. And you could see that the violinist is just so distraught. I would like to point out, however, that with that scene, with her beating the violinist and then her in the plate with Mickey in that scene, that I think they did a really good job with the screenplay of showing her with Fred and showing her without Fred doing the same movements.
Oh, yeah.
Doing the same stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think we had really seen that up until this point.
Right, exactly. Because it really pointed out that it was her alone doing everything.
Yeah.
And that was their way of doing that.
Yeah, so even as an audience member, we're seeing kind of what other people are seeing. Like seeing kind of the reality of this universe the movie takes place in.
Exactly.
This next scene, I think, is where the film takes a weird turn for me, like where I kind of lose a little bit of interest up until the climax. This is kind of like the lull part for me, when they go to see Dr. Ryland, this childhood psychiatrist. So they're in the waiting room, Elizabeth is, and her mother is in the doctor's office talking to him, and even talks to somebody, parents and their children in the waiting room. And this one parent says, "Oh, he's really great with children," and was asking about Elizabeth's children. She's like, "Oh, I don't have any children." So, "Oh, well, who's in there?" It's my mother. "So which one of you?" "Me."
Fun fact.
Yeah. And then we learn that this doctor is a specialist in what they call imaginary friend syndrome.
Like the bad guy, basically.
Yeah, he's the bad guy. He gives Elizabeth the drugs that he says will fix that part of the brain that's not working or malfunctioning or something like that. That's typically how a doctor would talk, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But during this scene, like, Fred finds that other imaginary friends are in the room with him that are imaginary friends of the other children that are playing there. And so they, reconnect, and they're running around and they're laughing and farting and all that sort of thing. All the good stuff, yeah. And then we see each child's perspective. Like, they can only see their own imaginary friend. Like, they can't see the other one. Elizabeth can only see Fred, and he's dancing around and everything. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I am playing with my friends."
Right.
But that scene doesn't really... The only thing it really does, I think, is to give a broader perspective of this imaginary friends world or whatever.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about, because as we've talked about before, in reality, it's always, Elizabeth or the child, not the imaginary friend that's creating havoc.
Yeah.
But I think in this scene, it was the director's choice to say, all right, let's give Fred a more personable scheme or role in this movie that people can come to feel compassion for him. Mm-hmm. Because even as imaginary, non-existing, let's try to give him a more sentimental, compassionate role as a character. Mm-hmm. In a way, I think it was a good build-up to the climax, considering how it gave us a more sympathetic look at Fred, because I think it's all about that green pill.
Right.
That made us be like, wow, so we want Fred to live. This is huge, this is serious kind of thing.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we see that there's an actual threat to Fred's existence.
Right.
And we learn that these green pills that are supposed to get rid of the imaginary friend. Hey, don't let her take those pills, Fred. Remember what happened to, it mentions another imaginary friend.
And like the throat.
Just rips his throat open, But when they tell him about the green pills, Fred's like, what do they do? make you sick, make you stupid, I'll take him. I'm Fred.
I'm Fred. I'm invincible.
And he essentially thinks that nothing can stop me. Right. I can come and go as I please, and yet there is this threat that's been presented to him that he's actually, we see him become fearful. So now we're back in Elizabeth's bedroom, and we have a new character introduced.
Oh gosh, this
nurse, this muscle nurse, looks like Chris Farley in drag.
Oh yeah, like John Cena just went female. It's just like, whoa, all right.
And she, I guess, going to be this live-in nurse that's going to strong arm Elizabeth into taking this medication and to keep her basically under house arrest. She tells Elizabeth that you're going to behave. I've got a black belt and I could snap you like that.
Oh, gosh.
And so Mickey drops by with a box of stuff. I don't even know if we see what's in the box.
No, not really. I don't think so.
Yeah. But the mom answers the door and she's like, no, she can't see anybody. And so she closes the door and he just hangs out on the porch swing like a creeper, and he's just still kind of jolly and smiling and everything.
And we're all happy.
He's all happy. Yeah. And Elizabeth is in her room. She's a broken person. Then we have another flashback. The mom says, no more drop dead Fred. And the dad, he's really fed up with his wife. You can see how irritated he is. With Elizabeth, he's amused and he's curious. Like, he wants to know, like, why do you call him drop dead Fred? She's, well, that's his name, Daddy. You know? Fred's going to teach me how to cook today. We're making pants pie.
Oh my goodness, pants
and then,
pie. Yeah.
It didn't really grab me the way it did when I saw this movie before. But after she says, we're making pants pie, it's so warm and cute. And then the mom immediately like pulls her hair.
Oh yeah,
and she yells, "This is your 5-year-old daughter.
This is abuse.
This is abuse. This is abuse." The dad just seems irritated about it. And then the mom, this really got to me. She says, "Sometimes I don't think I love you as much as I used to."
Like, as a parent, I would never imagine saying that. You know?
Exactly. When you say that you don't love someone as much as you used to a 5-year-old.
Especially a 5-year-old.
She loved her more when she was
an infant,
and more helpless and needful.
Because I'm sure that even at 5 years old, I remember stuff from certain memories that have lasted for a while since I was in first grade or even kindergarten. And if I were to hear that from my parents, I'm sure some of that would stick in my mind forever.
Right. And in the moment, you might not understand the weight of that. But years later,
yes, exactly.
Reflecting on that and remembering, feeling that renewed sense of sadness.
Emotional loss.
Emotional loss.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Then Fred shows back up.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth gets all happy and excited again. And he's like, I got cornflakes disease.
That was great.
I love it. He opens his jacket and cornflakes just start spraying out of his chest. And Elizabeth is jumping up and down. She's so happy. He really loves making her laugh.
I think it's so adorable.
It is. Whenever she's under duress or abuse, she is getting something from Fred that she's not getting from everyone else.
Exactly.
She's getting that not only attention, but that longing for compassion.
Right.
To have someone that can not only listen to you, but to kind of go on these adventures with, and get into mischief. Speaking of, they go on to make a mud pie.
Yeah.
And they say that they're going to cut the mom's head off and make her eat it. Fred's like, oh, well, I'll eat her head then.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth's like, I'll eat the rest of her.
Yeah. Let's throw her out the window.
Yeah. Then we'll poo her all over the table.
Oh, it's so great. But you are right, though. I think there's an immediate sense of warmth in that scene between both characters, between Elizabeth and Fred. And as the movie continues on, personally, I felt, a little chaotic internally, even with the movie starting up and with Fred on the scene and how chaotic he was and how much he wreaked havoc. But at the latter part of the movie, you'd almost get this, and especially with the whole green pill situation or, with her being little and the flashbacks of how much you really care for Fred and how much he's doing for her. And it was just a very immense swift of emotion.
Well, you realize that he's not out to cause harm. He has good intentions.
He has very good intentions, yes. Exactly.
He does, he's guilty of screwing things up from time to time, but he ultimately, in the end, is there because of Elizabeth and to ensure that she is happy and is cared for. Another thing is that he's the friend, but he also plays this kind of paternal role. Like, he really takes care of her, like,
right.
In this fatherly sort of way. And talking about the father, like her real father, as we know, he is just kind of on the sidelines. He doesn't like the way that Elizabeth is treated, but he doesn't do anything about it.
Right. He's very passive.
Very passive. This is wrong. And then he just kind of goes away.
Right.
He's just as guilty of letting all this happen because he just was so hands off.
Lets it go.
Just lets it go. And he eventually leaves his wife. And we really don't know what happened in that case, but we can assume that he left his wife because of the way his wife acted towards Elizabeth and not because of the way Elizabeth was acting. Elizabeth writes him this letter. And she's drawn it with a crayon, she's like, drop dead Fred, you were my only friend and she took you away from me. And I know I'll see you again someday. If you come back, I promise we'll run away together. And she can't even write. She's just kind of like drawing symbols and stuff. Like it's just nonsense, But he's like reading it back to her. It's really sweet. Like
it's cute.
It's like, you see, promise, and he points to a symbol that means promise, but it's just some little doodle, you know.
Right. I thought that was cute.
Yeah. And she had written this, when she was 5, and so we come back to the present, and Elizabeth says, "But you didn't answer me." he really, as an actor, he really plays this up. Like, just kind of this, I read it as regret, like, for not coming back sooner.
Yeah.
She said that when he didn't answer the life and spirit and Fred went out of her.
That was huge. Fred as an emotion. Just it's a significant, like, I lost Fred. Not just Fred, the character, but Fred, what he gave her.
Yeah, like that essence, that sense of being or purpose or identity, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
it was part of her personality.
Right.
Fred.
Yeah, and her mother had locked him away in this jack-in-the-box and hid him from her. And that in itself, what I thought was really harsh, because you can see this little girl's face, like how terrified she is of her mother.
Right. And then it was like half of her heart was just left.
Yeah. She's like, don't take him away from me. Don't take him away from me. And she's like, if you find this box, I'm going to throw it in the trash and he's going to get crushed.
Like, okay, mega bitch.
Yeah, right, exactly. She's a mega bitch for a reason. This is a great line. She says, adult Elizabeth says, I wish I had never let my mother know how much she could hurt me. Once she knew how, she could do it all the time, and she did.
It's deep.
That is really deep. In that moment, she realizes not only the damage that's been done, but she's kind of able to articulate it finally, or to really own how she's feeling about the whole thing, like with the relationship with her mother.
Right.
Which she said that because of that, like, that's why she never let her mother see her true emotions again. So she's been a prisoner of her own mind, of her own body.
She's been internalizing all this pain.
Exactly, and it's just been welling up over all this time. And it's finally coming to a head, and eventually it really bursts through. So Fred gets her all excited again. It's like, we're gonna go to the Charlie party, you know, this wine tasting thing. And as they try to leave,
I thought this was awesome.
Yeah, this giant cartoonish nurse strong arms her and locks her in the room. It's like, good night, Flake. You know?
Yeah, I know. Like, all right,
night, Flake. And so they lock her in the room, and so she breaks the window with a phone, and
I love those breaking noises.
Yes, for the win. I love that. And then, so they crawl out the window onto the tree branch while Mickey is coming up the
That's
tree.
the last thing I would have guessed I would have seen. Like, I thought he would be still on the porch in desperation, but no, he's in more desperation on a tree branch.
That he's even become even more of a creeper, that he's scaled a tree and is going to climb to her window. So Weirdo Mickey gives him a ride to the party. He drops him off, and he's still just enamored by her. But she's too preoccupied with getting Charles back. And then so Fred has a costume change. He's got a nice little tux with a cane and a teardrop hairstyle pointing straight up. Very nicely hairsprayed. Yeah.
Rico Suave.
And so we meet Charles's lover, Elizabeth does. And Fred's like trying to, it's, oh, this is Charles. Yeah, go ahead, kiss him. He pushes her into Charles, and so they leave. Elizabeth is upset, and then Charles asks Annabella, are you okay? He calls her some little pet German name,
The usual Tim Matheson line.
Yeah, he's landed on that charm. Fred and Elizabeth go to Charles's apartment. I don't really know why they go to his apartment. But then Charles comes in and he's like, oh, I still love you and just want to protect you from guys like me.
Right.
And then she's just melts. Yeah, just melts in his arms, and they start making out, on the couch and everything. And so they go to sleep, and in the night they hear a noise. And so Charles has heard about Fred. So he's like, oh, it's him or me. It's him or me, this Fred guy. And so he thinks that this Fred guy has broken into the apartment. He goes to find the intruder. A lot of intruders. Mistaken intruders. He ends up knocking a person out, and it turns out to be the nurse.
The nurse, yeah, wow.
Yeah, with the mother trailing close behind.
There goes Goliath.
And then she's taking the green pills and everything. That's part of the thing that her mom tells Charles, like, just make her take the green pills, and then this problem's going to go away. And I think they're kissing again or something, and then he calls Elizabeth Annabella. And she's like, you call me Annabella. And he's like, oh, I meant, Lizzie. Yeah. And then she totally is like, okay, and they start kissing again. But while she's been taking these pills, we can see Fred, like, he's agonizing. Like, right. So he's slowly deteriorating. And then we see kind of a small montage, like Elizabeth is really caught up in in the romance and the domestic role. She's cooking for Charles and they're drinking wine and he's shaving and she's being playful and all this sort of thing. And so she seems happy, but every now and then she'll pass Fred and he'll say, "Oh, you're not happy." She'll just take another pill.
Right.
She's just living in that moment with Charles while she feels like everything is okay and back to normal.
Right. And to get even deeper with this, literally, by taking those green pills, she's suffocating Fred. And
yes,
literally she's in this whole entire scene montage. We see her living in this fake romantic world, wishing she could be that while also shutting out her real self.
Yes.
It's literally two worlds, one vanishing and one, the fake one, becoming more realistic. And when we see that, we see Elizabeth not being herself, really.
Right. She is just performing.
Yes,
this kind of idea of what she thinks she wants and what she feels like she's supposed to be and what she deserves, really.
Right.
She has seen Fred as this, I don't want to say antagonizing force, but maybe that's not it. Maybe it's just that she is so blinded to the fact that, okay, I've been trying to get Charles back and I have him back now, and this is all that matters to me. And so she just kind of lets everything else go by the wayside, including letting her friendship with her imaginary friend disintegrate.
Exactly.
So we see him, even like his outfit gets paler, and he can overhear Charles talking to Annabella on the phone.
Right.
He's at it again. He hasn't changed. Of course, she doesn't know. She trusts me and all that. And I thought, you dirtbag.
Yeah, what an asshole.
Yeah. You can see it in her face. Like that, I think, was the ultimate betrayal for her.
That did it for her.
Yeah.
Thanks to Fred.
Thanks to Fred, exactly. So he was still in her corner the whole time. She realizes what a fool I have been, that I have trusted him and I put everything into the idea of this man, and it was all fake.
Right. It was just all fake. It was, toxic.
So Fred, Drop Dead Fred, is nearly dead. And almost his last words, almost begging, leave him. You know the truth now. You've heard it for yourself. This is your chance to leave. And she is so scared. Like, she is so overwhelmed. Like, because, like, this, in her mind, like, this was the one thing that she really, really wanted.
Right.
In her life. She had it again, and then she realizes that it was all false, and things were not as they seemed, and just that, coming to her senses, she goes into full-on panic mode. Almost like self-preservation mode, where she has to deal with these issues right now.
Mm-hmm.
No more waiting around.
Exactly.
This is the critical time, because everything's coming to a head right now. And so she passes out into Fred. He's like, come with me.
Almost like time just stood still.
Right, yeah. She just kind of falls into him, and then the tone of the movie really changes here.
Yes, very much so.
And I think that it could be read as just some tonal inconsistencies in the movie, but this is really like an intentional shift, because for Elizabeth, this is the moment where she has got to come back from this on her own. She's got to deal with these things now, and so can only do so in this world of imagination.
It was like her conscious.
Yes, it was like her subconscious, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it was disorienting at first, because when she falls into Fred, all of a sudden we're kind of floating through space, through the clouds. And I think she says, where are we going? He's like, use your imagination. And so we arrive at this house. Is it the same house from the outside?
Very similar.
It's similar. I know the inside isn't the same.
No, but I think the outside is.
The outside is, that red door. So they arrive at this house in this void. And they go inside, and it's very, dreamlike, this kind of alternate version of reality. Like, it's very museum-like, with these, like, ropes and these felt ropes and barriers. You can feel how, restrictive it is.
Very bleak.
Very bleak.
With gray and black. And
yeah, very muted colors. Mm-hmm. The fireplace, there's not flames in it. It's like foil or mylar streamers, just kind of wiggling in there. So everything has the aesthetic of being a representation of something else.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden in the foyer, Charles appears in a Jaguar, and he's saying those suave comments again. Come on, Lizzie, I'm going to take you away. And Fred's like, what are you going to do about him? And so she grabs the hood ornament of the Jag and pulls it off, and the car just kind of farts away like a balloon. I mean, the effect isn't all that great, but it highlights kind of the whimsical way that she is letting these things go.
Right.
That she is, even in her mind, taking action. She is actually doing something about it. So Charles is out of the picture. There's a staircase. Fred tries to run up it, but it's two-dimensional, so he just slides back down. And so Elizabeth uses her mind to create a tree that they use to climb to get to the next floor. And so at the next level, Mom pops up and says, where do you think you're going? And, her voice is all modulated and weird, Mm-hmm. So it still has that kind of otherworldly quality to it. Fred said, just say the magic words, which happen to be, I'm not afraid of you. So Elizabeth tells her mother, finally, I'm not afraid of you. And then she bursts into flames and disappears. And just to pause for a second, it reminded me of the end of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes. Yeah, it was very similar.
Yeah, because Nancy could only defeat Freddy by taking back the energy that she gave him, by saying, I'm not afraid of you anymore.
Yes.
And then he just kind of disappeared. He turned into particles and disappeared. And so it was kind of the same, this is how you slay the boogeyman.
It's by subconsciously eliminating them, because it's all in the mind. It's
right.
Freddy was in the mind, mm-hmm. and so is Elizabeth's mom. Mm-hmm. Or the anger that she had for her mom was inside of her.
Right.
It was crazy.
And this was kind of touching. She goes to the next floor, and there we see 5-year-old Elizabeth taped to her bed. It was the same tape that her mom used to tape up the Jack in the Box with Fred in it.
That was very significant.
Yeah.
It's very deep.
It's very deep. And so we see adult Elizabeth freeing her younger self by tearing the tape and says, you don't have to be afraid anymore, and then they hug each other. And I don't know, it's kind of sweet. And
it was very, very much so. Yeah. It deserved to be the climax of the movie.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Even though, like I said, for me, that third quarter of the movie kind of lagged for me, this redeems all that.
Exactly.
Because this is what it's been building up to. So it's a really good payoff for a climax, I think.
Right.
Fred says, you have to go now. And she says she's ready. And he says, you've got you now. You don't need me. So goodbye.
That's kind of depressing.
I know.
Oh, jeez. I'm just like... Damn, Fred.
I know.
What are you doing to me, man?
I know. I said, no, you gotta come back. You gotta come back. And so he just says, kiss me and say, drop dead Fred. And this is, a really sweet moment because they kiss and she says, drop dead Fred. They embrace and then he kind of disappears and she's left hugging herself.
Right.
Right.
It just sends chills down my spine.
It really is ultimately what Elizabeth needed to happen is to not only find herself and free herself, but to finally love herself.
Right.
And to appreciate the Fred in her.
Right. It's a realization of everything that he is, what he is, and how he's made the impact he has with her. And I think by that hug, it was as if she finally accepted his personality inside of hers.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
It was huge. It's awesome. For a comedy movie, they really put a twist on it and made it so dramatic.
Yeah, it pulled back the curtain to show a heart.
Yes.
It had something deeper embedded in that, in the slapstick comedy and everything.
Right.
So Elizabeth comes to again and sees Charles. He's like, "Oh, is that dinner ready yet?" She dumps the food on his head, and on her way out, she wipes a booger on his face.
I thought that was...
Yeah, it's like she got her Fred back.
Right.
So she comes home, she stands up to her mother, and her mother makes this comment about, I had a child to save a marriage.
What? I was like, what? What's that about?
Yeah, I was like, whoa, it's coming out of left field.
Right.
and she says that Elizabeth's father left because of her. But like we said before, really it's because of his wife being so overbearing and abusive and all that sort of thing. So it's like the mother was grasping at anything to throw the blame back at Elizabeth.
She could not accept her own fault, whatever she did.
Exactly. We can tell that she is starting to lose that control over Elizabeth. And so she's kind of struggling to latch on to anything she can throw back at her.
Right.
So Elizabeth finally goes to leave. Like, she's really going to leave this time. She is headed out the door. And, Mom says, "Don't you dare walk out on me." Elizabeth, Lizzie.
It gets softer.
Softer. It's the first time that we actually hear her call her daughter Lizzie.
Exactly. Yeah.
She takes off that. In that moment, she goes from mother to like a really lonely human being.
Yes.
she says, don't walk out on me. I'll be lonely.
Right.
And that's what stops Elizabeth. Like, we see the mom's facade give a little bit, but it doesn't fall away entirely. But for the first time, it seems like this is the most honest and scared Elizabeth has known her mother to be.
Right. The dragon has become a teddy bear.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and can be, and is made vulnerable.
Yes.
In that moment.
Yes.
And Elizabeth goes to her, like, she turns around and she goes to her mother, hugs her and kisses her, and her mom is kind of beside herself. Like, she doesn't really know where this is coming from. And this is a great line, and very sincerely delivered. She says, she tells her mother, you should get yourself a friend.
Beautiful. Beautiful touch. Epic, nice little cherry on top. That was just
absolutely
nice finish.
Then lastly, she runs into Mickey in the last scene, and he tells her, you're going to have a lot of options now, and I want to be one of them.
Okay, Mickey. Yeah. Whatever you say, man.
Yeah. Her only response is, okay. And there's really no identifiable meaning in that delivery.
No, there was no result. It was just on a whim. Okay.
Yeah, it's almost dismissive. Like okay, whatever.
I'm glad that Mickey's in this movie.
Yeah,
all right. I'm glad he has significance.
So in this last bit, Mickey's daughter comes out. The babysitter is running out too, saying the daughter made a mess in the kitchen, and she's covered, with all kinds of like chocolate and stuff, and she says, "Drop Dead Fred did it." And then they're like, What? What'd you say? Like they never heard that name before. And then Fred pops out. We can tell that Elizabeth can't see him now. Mickey's daughter and Fred already have like a little inside thing going on, which happened very quickly, by the way.
Yes, I know.
Unless he's been moonlighting as this other person's imaginary friend. So the babysitter storms out, quits, and she gets caught up in this elaborate booby trap that Mickey's daughter and Fred have set up with these really heavy things in a net on one side and this rope looped over a tree limb with a
yeah, it was like a noose. I think the creativity was phenomenal, but it was a very elaborate noose with just rope circles, and Fred knows what he's doing.
Yeah. And then a great little last image is Mickey's daughter and Fred are laughing, and they lock pinkies, and Elizabeth sees the little girl with her pinky stuck out, but she can't see Fred, and she just looks, knowing that it's curled around Fred's phantom pinky.
Yes.
And smiles.
I think that was such honestly the best way to end that movie.
Yes.
And seeing that just melted my heart, and it really connected with the climax, with the meaning, the morale of the entire movie. And when she sees that pinky, it's like, I did something that was worthwhile in my life, and I'm glad it was Fred.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of Fred, when she saw that pinky, it was like, that's why we watched this movie. So she smiles knowing that this girl has the best thing in her life with her.
Right.
Thing,
Yeah, and she even tells the little girl, the girl says, you don't believe me? And Elizabeth is like, no, I believe you, and next time you see him, send him my love.
Right, right.
And I don't know, it's just, she has that comfort in knowing that not only that Fred is still out there, but he is being, for someone else, what he was for her.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Movie. It's such a great movie. Such a great comic. You don't see a lot of comical films carry that much weight of drama, of emotion, of meaning. It's always funny. It's always, let's laugh for 90 minutes, have a great time. But for this show, it was, let's laugh for 30, and for the rest, let's get our hearts down deep into the abyss of the Mariana Trench. That's
a good way of putting it.
Yeah. It's amazing how they did that.
Yeah. Had you seen this film before?
I have not.
Really?
It was a very beautiful introduction to, because at first I was like, all right, Fred's going to be a nice little kick back, relax, and laugh at his jokes and craziness, but I was not ready for the whole emotional side to it. It was beautiful. Yeah. It was beautifully done.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really am. And we've kind of talked about this along the way, but in short, what were the things you liked most about this film?
I loved the emphasis put on Fred most of all. And Elizabeth filled in everything that needed to be with Fred, because for me, I wanted to see the max of which Fred would offer to this movie, of what he would offer to Elizabeth and what she would take from it. And I think the beginning to the end of how, he's just this chaotic guy that always wreaks havoc, to, wow, he's the best thing that ever happened to Elizabeth. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Rick Mayall's performance is just, he's delightful. Like, he goes from manic to tender in an instant.
Right.
Phoebe Cates, I think, is fine in it, but Rick he steals the show.
He knows what he's doing.
And I think, and for me, like, he's one of the few, Drop Dead Fred is one of the few characters that feels so, I don't say fleshed out, or developed, but so iconic. Like, when you see, kind of like, he's like this in his stand-up and other stuff, but this is a character all its own.
Yes.
This is a creative thing.
Yes.
And Carrie Fisher was great too. She's high up there. I'd read that on a lot of the movies she's worked on, like, she is allowed to have a pass at her dialogue, like, to rewrite some stuff. And so it's nice knowing that, she had a hand in developing some of those lines for her, for Janie.
You could tell. You could tell. Her way of smiling, her way of talking, it's just a very smooth dialogue with her. And honestly, I'm sorry, but as a Star Wars nerd, I'm like, Princess Leia is back at it again.
I know, we were talking about this before we started recording, she looks great.
Yeah.
And, she's still got her voice. She looks
age.
Healthy. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
She was great fun. Was there anything in particular you didn't like about this movie?
I mean, I can't really say much with, of course, Tim Matheson's going to be the douchebag of douchebags.
Yeah.
But overall, no, I didn't really have any critic type of comments to say about this movie. How about you?
Upon rewatching it, like, some of the effects, like we said, don't really hold up, and they're not terribly distracting, but they are noticeable. Like, they are. They do kind of. I'm a very detail oriented person, so it kind of pulls me out of the movie a little bit when they happen, but that is totally forgivable. And like I said, the psychiatrist scene I wasn't in love with, and all that green pill stuff, everything up into the climax, I never really remembered that stuff because I remember seeing this on video probably around the time it came out, and all that stuff I stopped watching at that point. Right. And I would just wait until we go into Elizabeth's subconscious.
Because I definitely think it pulled us away from the plot. Especially that scene with the psychiatrist really pulled us away from what was actually happening.
Yeah, it felt to me that the film got to a point where they were trying to come up with something
as a filler.
Yeah, like they needed something. The film needed legs to go somewhere.
Right.
Like, I think they were they were starting to run out of steam of just stuff that Fred could get into. But ultimately, like, I think that was the catalyst for what got Elizabeth to come to terms with everything.
Right.
So it did serve a purpose. I think just the execution was a little bit lacking.
Right.
So, I don't know, what value do you think this movie still has?
I would definitely recommend to our followers and fans to rewatch it if you need a good Friday night film to look back on. Rewind yourself from a nice long week of stress. And if you are a romantic comedy person, not saying that this has anything to do with a romantic, I would definitely recommend this movie for the emotion and for the little funny scenes that hop on along the way.
I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, it's become a cult film for a reason. The memorable scenes that we've talked about, they're so worth it. Fred is very much worth it. And I don't know, you can really see how someone could work through very deeply seated issues in a creative sort of way. So like we said, it has heart, it has laughs, it has a few tugs on your heartstrings, but as Joseph said, it's a great Friday night flick. You can't really find it on DVD these days unless you find it on eBay. It's still kind of expensive. I found it again on Amazon. I downloaded it off of there.
Amazon's really good for that stuff.
Yeah, their catalog is really starting to to blossom, and
Beautiful.
a lot of out-of-print stuff is starting to come back. Thank goodness. Any final thoughts?
No. Do you? You have any final thoughts?
No, I thought we were.
This is great.
We were pretty thorough.
Yeah.
You know. All right. Well, that is all that we have for Drop Dead Fred, but we have another movie from 1991 next week. This time we decided to hit up the action-adventure shelf. What is it, Joseph?
The one, the only Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Ooh, yes. The epic tale of the man who returns from the Crusades to steal from the rich and give to the poor. What a classic. And with an all-star cast, too. We got Kevin Costner, Morgan Freeman, Alan Rickman, and Christian Slater.
Gosh. Great people.
Yeah, so stay tuned for some sword fights and questionable English accents. If you have questions for us or have feedback on the show, send them our way at vericonvideo@gmail.com. You can also leave us a message for us at the Vericon Video hotline at 312-620-5560. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Vericon Video. We're easy to find. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Also, we're rolling out some merch. Look for our cool t-shirts, stickers, and more at www.teepublic, that's teepublic.com. And we've also launched our own Patreon page so that listeners like you can support the show. Help us grow as a podcast and help us to create better content for you. Patreon is a platform for content creators, and for a monthly pledge, patrons get perks and rewards depending on the tier that you choose. This could be bonus episodes or commentaries, exclusive Vericon Video merchandise, or even an opportunity to join us on the show. Together we can build a community of forgotten and unforgettable movie fans at www.patreon, that's patreon.com/Vericon Video. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and we will see you next week. So long.
See you guys.
Goodbye, Vietnam! That's right. I'm history. I'm out of here. I got the lucky ticket home, baby.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Jenny.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle. Goodbye.
Do take good care of yourself.
What is this, your farewell speech? Going home. Have a good trip.
Hasta la vista, baby.
I have to go.
Adieu, auf Wiedersehen, Gesundheit,